Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, I will give you today's statistics. The total number of tests undertaken is 4,032. The total number of concluded tests is 3,998. The total number of outstanding test results, therefore, is 34. The total number of confirmed cases now stands at 334. That means there have been 2 new cases since yesterday's update, and there are now 21 active cases. It is also with great sadness that I must confirm a further death from this dreadful disease. Sometimes it is too easy to hear the statistics each day and view them as just that, statistics. But behind each of those numbers, there is a human story. We must never forget that, and every single death must give us pause for thought and reflection on how this virus has hit directly at the heart of another family and deprived them of their loved one. My thoughts are with their family and friends at this exceptionally difficult time. Throughout these regular coronavirus briefings, we have endeavoured to bring you a number of guests. This has meant that we can go into more detail on the ways coronavirus is affecting our island and how we are responding to these challenges. Many people in our community have found themselves working from home. The way that organisations and individuals have responded to the need for home working has been quite frankly phenomenal. It has meant that large parts of our economy and public services have been able to continue with day-to-day business, almost in some cases as usual. It shows how technology, and in particular broadband internet, has transformed our working lives. It enables us to work in different locations, on different and often multiple devices at times that suit us. The impact on our economy and people's livelihoods as a result of COVID-19 is significant. But had this virus hit 20 or even 10 years ago, I doubt so many parts of our economy and so many of our public services would have been able to remain operational through home working. Despite the fortunate situation we find ourselves in with our ability to work from home, it is not without risks. Before becoming Minister for Health and Social Care, although it feels like a lifetime ago now, I was political member in the Cabinet Office, and my remit covered cyber security and the development of the island's national cyber security strategy. Cyber security has been a hot topic in recent years, and we need only keep track of current affairs to see why. Whether it is cyber attacks this month, targeted at 2 construction companies involved in building the Nightingale hospitals, or a recent vulnerability found in Microsoft Teams that could be triggered via animated GIFs, it is all too easy to see why cybersecurity is something all of us need to be conscious of. And this is not just about our work lives either. Cybersecurity has never been so important in our personal lives as well. From online shopping and banking, to keeping our digital devices secure and social media accounts safe, cybersecurity affects us all. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Joanne Roberts, Director of the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance. And I won't pause any longer, and I will hand over to Jo, who I know has been looking forward to speaking to you. So Jo, over to you.
Thank you, Minister. Before I start, could I just offer my condolences to the family of the deceased. So I've been asked today to come to talk to you about cybersecurity, and that's because digital technology has come to underpin our global economy and our way of life. Advances that have been made over recent decades have brought some real benefits that have revolutionised our way of life, offering unparalleled connectivity, increased efficiency and convenience. And during COVID, we've seen the real benefits of this technology when we've been trying to keep in touch with loved ones, which the Minister has mentioned, also for online shopping, which I'm sure a number of us are doing, and for a number of us from working from home. Some really big benefits to this technology. And even outside of COVID, many aspects of what we do now, without giving it much thought, are reliant on this digital technology. And that can be from checking our bank account balance, which we can do in an instant with this technology, to paying an invoice or sharing an image on social media. However, this dependence on technology makes us quite a tempting target for criminals and those wishing to undermine our way of life. And it's these inherent threats that require that we be vigilant. So to give you an example of this, I'm going to go back to an example for COVID. Reports show that cyber criminals were exploiting COVID from as early as February. And that's even before the virus began to have a major impact on our daily lives here on the Isle of Man. Phishing emails relating to COVID increased 400% from the beginning of March until the end of March. So for anyone who's unsure, phishing is a type of online scam where you'll be sent an email that appears to be from a trustworthy individual or organisation, and they'll be asking you either to give them some personal information or click on a link. And the purpose of that email is either so that they can take away your personal details or that they want to install a virus onto your device. So some of the themes that we've been seeing on these COVID phishing emails have been the impersonation of health organisations and governments, usually with updates on COVID. Also, emails showing new recommendations and guidelines, information on cures, tests, and even face masks. So for emails, when you receive them, I'd say always check the sender of the email. Is the company or the individual who's sending it, does their name look correct? Are you expecting the email? That would be the question that I'd be asking myself. And also, what they're offering you, is it too good to be true? So my advice on that is think before you click. As well as emails, there can also be malicious text messaging, phone calls as well, and they all have the same intention as the phishing email. So whether through the actions of malicious individuals, organisations, or even nation states, the digital landscape is a key battleground in the fight against petty and organised crime. I'd just like to make it clear that the Isle of Man remains the safest jurisdiction in the British Isles. This sense of safety and security, sometimes we take it for granted, but yet it's the foundation of our society. However, the Isle of Man and we are not immune to these threats, and we can't ignore them. And as a consequence, cybersecurity has never been so important in safeguarding our way of life and our prosperity. Demonstrating the Isle of Man government's commitment to protecting the island against these threats, the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance was established by Council of Ministers in October 2017 to develop the island's cyber resilience. And Oxia has a skilled team who are dedicated to this objective. Oxia established the National Cybersecurity Strategy, which was published in May 2018, and this strategy is based around key principles with the aim to keep our island aware, secure and resilient. There can be no excuse for failing to take cybersecurity seriously. Across the world, we've seen businesses suffer reputational damage and commercial loss when their customers' personal details have been taken by hackers. All of us will have heard stories of individuals who've had a heavy price to pay for unknowingly divulging passwords or personal information to cyber criminals. Now, when we think of cyber, we immediately think of technology and we think it being quite complicated, a little bit complex. And I've heard phrases such as, I won't understand it, it's a technology problem and it requires a technology solution. And in the background, there's lots of technology. However, for me, cybersecurity is about people and it's about education. There are reports that show that 80% of cyber attacks could have been prevented with better education and awareness by the users. And that's why, over the past 12 months, the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance has been running a campaign to engage island residents on simple steps that they could take to protect themselves. So we've put out advice on passwords, so 3 random but memorable words, using our hashtag to be more random. We've also put out advice on updating devices and software, as well as online shopping advice and security settings on social media accounts. And that's just to name a few of the topics that we've covered during that period. So as education is the key component to protecting ourselves from those threats, we're going to continue with this awareness campaign and ask everyone to really think about what are those simple steps that they can do to protect themselves, the family, the community and businesses in this digital era. It's in a digital world that only through communication, collaboration and cooperation we can work together to make sure that our island remains aware, secure and resilient. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to the Minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jo. Very thought-provoking, and I think what you've said hammers home the message of just how important education and awareness are in the battle to keep our own data, but also our national infrastructure and our economy safe in the digitally dependent era. There is constantly people out there to try and exploit digital platforms and exploit the way that we use them, and it is important that people try to remain safe. I'll turn now to questions, and first up I've got Manx Radio and Tim.
First am I, Minister, and obviously our condolences to the nearest and dearest of the person who's passed away. Very sad news indeed. Can I ask Jo the first question, if I may, Minister, as my second question's to you and it'll flow better?
Yes, certainly.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sure you're aware of the Isle of Man newspaper's story, which emerged this week about pictures of young women being uploaded to an adult content website without their permission. Some were even depicted as underage. It's a police matter, I know, but is this something that you would investigate as well and try to get to the reason how it's happened and how to stop it in future?
So to answer that question, yes, I'm fully aware of that, and I'm aware that obviously the police are obviously aware of that as well. I don't want to comment on specific cases, but what I'd say is actually that this is it gives us a timely reminder of when we are sharing information online, what we have to, whatever that information is, whether it's a text message with a viewpoint on it, whether it's financial information, whether it's images, once we share them, we start to let go of we lose control of what can happen with that image. And that's one of the things that we're trying to show through our awareness campaign, of be really mindful of what is put out there, because actually we don't want to lose control of that.
Thank you.
No worries, thank you.
And your second question was for me, Tim.
Yes, just before I do that, I thought I'd save Paul Moulton a job, if I may.
You certainly can. I'm sure Paul will appreciate it.
Just with the very sad news that we've had this evening, can you give us a little bit more detail? Is it a hospital death, a community death linked to Abbotswood?
It is a death from the Noble site, and it is linked to Abbotswood.
Thank you. And the second question just concerns the thing we're getting most inquiries about now, and it's you can have an estate agent in the house, you can have family members from different households allowed to help with childcare only if somebody is working, but you're not allowed to go and visit family. Can you explain the medical science behind this state that we're in?
Yeah. Things have got to be unwound in a controlled manner, which I think I've referred to a couple of times, Tim. So we have to take actions a step at a time. So, for instance, you referred to the estate agents. The owner of the house should not be present when any viewings are taking place, and the guidance as well as even the estate agent, if accompanying a viewing, should actually not try to stay out of the premises while the viewing takes place. And the big encouragement is that people should be wherever possible, doing virtual viewings. So the estate agent should be trying to manage that. So it's not a case of we're saying everyone should be traipsing through loads of houses. People are still supposed to be social distancing, and that's how that should work with estate agents. In relation to family members, obviously, as the Chief Minister referred to, in terms of gatherings and everything else, there's more announcements to come next week that are still being worked upon. But what's important is, I know it's frustrating and people are saying, like, for instance, with the childcare, why don't we just open it up to everyone? But then if a cases spike and we have to look to go backwards or pause, we've got to turn the whole thing backwards. We don't know, particularly if we do a whole raft of measures together, we don't know which of those measures actually caused the spike. So you end up having to undo multiple things. So I know it is frustrating out there, and particularly around the childcare with people who are working at home, who are saying, why can't I get the relatives to look after the children because I'm trying to work from home and I've got a toddler running around. It's not an easy thing to do, but we've had to do it at that stage because we need to test it and see what the result is before we move on to expanding it any further.
Thank you.
Next up, I've got Rob at 3FM.
Good evening, Minister. Once again, very sad news today. Our thoughts and prayers with the family and friends of the person who's passed away in the last 24 hours. Both my questions are for Joanne, please.
Certainly.
Good evening, Rob.
Good evening, Joanne. Nice to see you. First of all, from the Office of Cybersecurity perspective, to your knowledge, how many COVID-19 related cyber attacks have targeted residents and businesses here on the Isle of Man since the outbreak first began?
That's really hard to say, Rob. What we do have, as part of the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance, we have a reporting point that you can access through gov.im/Oxia, and people can report things into us for us to have a look at. And we have had quite a significant number of reports of, for instance, phishing emails, as well as phone calls and text messaging along those lines. I think what you also have to remember is there's sometimes we've seen an increase in certain things that aren't directly related to COVID, but they're as a result of. So, for instance, an uplift in the number of buy and sell scams, and that's because people aren't going viewing goods. So actually, it's indirectly correlated to COVID as well.
Thank you. And secondly, obviously, it depends largely, I guess, on what you see and what is reported to you as potential scams and attacks. But how do you go out to proactively stop these sort of things, particularly when people's financial or even medical details could be at risk?
So in terms of proactivity, we have got a very close relationship with the financial institutions on the island, and we also have information sharing communities with a number of businesses, which allows us to find out quite quickly, as well as to advise businesses quite quickly of what is going on. So that really is key on that, really, to be able to stop things before they get too big.
Thank you.
And if I can just add to that, Rob, one of the things Jo said when she was giving a statement before that's very, very key is it's around education. And if things appear to be too good, it's something that seems too good to be true, then people should pause and think before they start sharing their personal information. If you're dealing with a company that you've dealt with regularly, like your bank, they won't ask you for information that they already hold. They won't need to know that information. So it's about thinking before you click, basically, in a lot of cases. Okay, next up, I've got Simon at Business 365. Good evening, Simon.
Good evening, Minister. And firstly, may I echo your comments in respect of the sad news of another death. My question is, with so few new cases and only a modest number of active cases, could you tell us what is the statistical chance of a healthy person actually becoming infected on the Isle of Man?
Well, it's not done in that way. The calculation is around the RO number, as we know in many cases across epidemiology. The RO we think is around about 0.3, 0.4 on the island at the moment. But your statistical chance depends upon literally who you come into contact with. The way this virus works with asymptomatic stages of up to 14 days before symptoms show, it's clear there is still a transmission in the community. So the absolutely key thing is not to be trying to work out and think, well, statistically, I'm okay. There's a low chance of me contracting it. You could be that one who does contract it. So the important thing is that people do remain vigilant and they do abide by the rules and regulations we've got in place. We know with this virus it affects people in different ways. And yes, a lot of people get very, very mild cases, and some cases don't even show symptoms at all. But there are people, and there is a bank of evidence emerging around the world where people who have been perfectly healthy, who aren't in the older age group, who haven't got underlying medical conditions, have unfortunately died from this virus. So, as I've said many times at this press conference, even if you're young with no health conditions, it is still not a guarantee that you will be absolutely fine. So it is important people continue with all the measures such as social distancing we've got in place, no matter how statistically probable it is that you will catch it.
Okay, thank you. My second question, please, is for Joanne. Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Thanks for your sort of comprehensive story before. What I'd like to know is, have many island companies actually had their security compromised during the crisis? Is there a significant number involved?
Again, I'm not going to give any specific details of that. But actually what we found is we've had a number of individuals compromised during the crisis. Island companies do get compromised, but it's more throughout this crisis, it's more individuals, and actually it's more about phishing, it's more emails and the text messaging, etc. That's what we're seeing at the moment. But what we need to remember is, at the moment, we've set up our
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and next I've got Paul at MTTV. Good evening, Paul.
Thank you. And my thanks to Tim for helping us out. But can you give us the other part of that, which is those two new cases? Were they the usual, question for me?
Yeah, those two particular cases, they're just general community cases. There's no link with returning sectors that's been established. They're just cases that have popped up in the community. And as far as, certainly from what I've seen, they've got no link at the moment to any other active cases. So again, it reinforces that message that there is still, although it's low levels, there is still a level of community transmission out there.
Okay. My first question is from a viewer, and I hope you don't mind. We've actually got him asking.
Oh, you've frozen there, Paul.
Much less than 200 daily testing reagents. It's a cost if these reasons testing more widely to further reduce risk and potential loss of life. Sample tables indicate that 400 random tests undertaken on the Isle of Man population would give 95% certainty of how many people have coronavirus on the island. Would more testing data be valuable to know before easing the lockdown measures? And what call volume data can you share from the 111 service?
How's that?
Right, well, I caught the back end of it. Unfortunately, we lost the first part of it. You froze, and my technological translation isn't quite so good. But I think I get the general gist. So it's around testing and doing a random sample check to actually see. I think we've covered this before. The only test that we have that is accurate at the moment is a PCR test. Now, PCR test is a point in time, so that's the swabs. So while it would give you the point in time at that day, the actual form of valuable testing that we hope will be online in the next couple of weeks, subject to final verification, is the antibody testing. Once we have antibody testing where we can test who's had it, that will actually be the valuable test to do in that way. PCR testing, which tells you if you've got it at that time, isn't really valuable as a random sample test, because as we've said before, if you're in the early days of being asymptomatic, the test can come back negative. And I personally know of someone, a friend of mine who's in the UK, who went through the UK scheme. They were tested on the Tuesday. They got their results back on the Thursday saying negative. They then felt ill on the Friday, went back for testing on the Saturday, and the following week were told they were positive. So it's not so with PCR testing, while it gives you a great point in time, I'm not sure you can correlate that out in the way that the person was saying to give you 95% certainty as to how the spread is. Antibody testing will be much more effective in that way, and we're hoping that a fully certified antibody test will be able to be rolled out in the next couple of weeks.
My next question, a very long one that came in. This is also from a viewer, so I'm really just having to get it down to the very basics. It's about A&E department, especially out of hours, regular hours, and to do with the two sorts of cases, the COVID side and the non-COVID. You with me so far?
Yes,
That makes sense, 'cause
yes,
okay.
yeah. We've got
So
we've got A&E divided at the moment.
Yeah.
For those
So
showing
can I ask
symptoms.
why
of those
patients are being moved from the new non-COVID A&E department rooms when they get down to maybe 2 or 3 patients into then the COVID waiting room, this is after hours, and then closing the new A&E and treating them as if they presumably therefore have COVID patients. In some of them obviously are not. There's lots more to that, but I'm just trying to make it as succinct as possible. Does that ring any bells? Would that be the case? Is that what's happening? Because this lady, or gentleman, I don't know who it is very certain on the facts.
Right, well, if you send that on to me, Paul, I'll have that looked at. My understanding is the two are divided off. The only reason I think it would happen is if the COVID side isn't being used, so it's been deep cleaned, which they then use for other patients. Because the key thing around it is around the volume of people going through A&E. At certain points, there is the ability, obviously, to deep clean the areas. Once the areas have been deep cleaned, they can be used for whatever purpose. Because they are no longer in a position to carry infection.
I'll send it on to you.
But if you send it on to me, then I'm more than happy to take a look into it.
Thank you very much. Thanks, David.
Next up, I've got Josh at ITV.
Thanks, Minister. Will the government be giving any new advice on general PPE now that more people will be entering retail spaces from Monday? I've asked previously whether the advice is that we should be wearing face coverings in the Isle of Man and was told that we could be wearing them. Therefore, it currently remains a choice for Isle of Man residents, but the government isn't advising that we should. So will there now be a change in stance?
No, there won't be, Josh. Our advice was updated only very recently, about 2 weeks ago. That advice still remains valid, that it is personal choice. If people go onto the website and look under face coverings, we give them a guide, but it is personal choice as to whether people wish to or not. There is not enough evidence around the world that shows it clearly one way or the other. There is some low level of scientific data that suggests that if someone's asymptomatic, them wearing a face covering may actually protect others around them. But again, it's low level evidence around the world. And equally, there is pretty much the scientific body as a whole is pretty clear on the fact that a mask doesn't protect the wearer themselves out in the community. So no, our advice hasn't changed. It's personal choice. And in fact, I know you raised this with the Chief Minister the other day about the change of advice in the UK. Well, the UK's advice has actually changed to our advice. So the UK is actually catching up with where we were 2 weeks ago.
But it seems the UK is now advising perhaps more that you should rather than you could.
No, they're not. The UK has made absolutely clear, and if you go on and read the advice, it is very, very clear that it's exactly the same as ours, that it is personal choice, that people may want to consider wearing masks where social distancing is impossible or where they are in enclosed spaces, and that's exactly what we are doing. But one of the things you've also got to remember, Josh, is when we're talking about big jurisdictions like the UK, they have the mass transit systems that we don't have. So on the tube, etc., people crammed into enclosed spaces. And even in terms of what we term as supermarket and what is termed a supermarket across the water are very different environments, and particularly with the numbers of people that you're likely to come into contact with. So those things have got to be bearing in mind when you cross-reference advice from different jurisdictions as well, that the actual social situation on the ground can be very different.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, given we've got these economic phases of businesses reopening in the Stay Safe response document, can we expect to see something similar published on the different phases of social interaction? For example, we started with seeing people meeting in their garden and then expanding onto social bubbles, perhaps, just to give some people some hope in the future, because social interaction is certainly something that people are calling out for.
Well, there is references in the medium-term plan to social and the different levels of social interaction around social distancing and everything else. We have to take things a stage at the time. I don't think you can directly link the social with the economic. obviously what we need to do is we need to look at what's happening around the world and decide what's best for us here on the island. So, for instance, people have talked about bubbles and, households combining up. Some countries have found that in itself causes problems because particularly if it's one household that has to link with another household, it means every member of those households has to agree to that linking with that one household. They can't all pick different households, which I believe has caused some issues in some jurisdictions. And another one is it means, for instance, with grandparents, there might be two sets of grandparents. Which do you choose? Which household do you link with? Do you not? So each of the social interactions brings with it its own problems. So we have to look very, very carefully at that. So it's not just a case of being able, as you can in a certain way with the economy, of boxing it into a sector and putting it into a phase. These things have got to be thought through very, very carefully. And it is going to be a slow process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, then next I've got Chris at Energy FM.
Good evening, Minister. First of all, are you able to tell us if either of the two new confirmed cases of the virus came into the island after the borders were closed?
They've not got any travel history.
No travel history. Okay, thank you. Can you also confirm whether the manager of one of the island's biggest and most well-known supermarkets has been given clearance by the Manx government to not only return to the island, but also go straight back to work and not complete a 14-day period of self-isolation?
Well, the first thing I'd have to say, Chris, is I can't, because I wouldn't be be able to be privy to that information myself. I, as minister, are not given that level of personal information about someone. What I can answer is around key workers. Key workers are allowed to return to work. They do still have to self-isolate, by the way. They actually can go to work, but there's public health rules around what they can undertake, how they interact with people, or more importantly don't interact with people while they are working, and they have to stay at home when they are not working for the 14 days. On that instance, I don't know any more than you, and I wouldn't expect to know, even if I did, I can't comment on an individual case here in a press conference.
Okay, my second question to you, earlier this week, I know you've been flat out, you were speaking with the world's only celebrity Mansfield Town fan, and you confirmed that most scientific studies over the last few weeks say children are less likely to spread coronavirus. Schools have reopened in many countries which have been worse hit than the Isle of Man. Now, perhaps the situation in the UK is still too risky to allow children back in, but over here, why has there been such a delay, considering the low number of active cases? I mean, is it simply down to objections from the unions?
No, the Minister for Education, I think, has covered this. The first thing I need to clear up, though, is I didn't say most studies. I need to be very clear on that. I said there is a growing bank of evidence of studies that are saying children aren't as big a spreaders as was originally thought. Because initially, when the pandemic started, children were referred to as super spreaders, that they were going to go out and infect quite a lot of people because they show low symptoms. That, as time's moved on through the pandemic, the scientific evidence is now moving towards the fact that's not the case. But in relation to schools, as the Minister for Education has said, a lot of schools to come back into service, it's not going to be business as usual. They're going to have to be set up differently. There needs to be deep cleaning of the schools done as well. They've got to work out the logistics as to how the schools will operate, because they still need to employ social distancing in some form within the schools. So it is absolutely essential that that is all sorted first. And that's not a quick process. So it's not just simply a case of saying, right, we can open the doors and all children can go back in. There's a lot of things in the background logistically the Department of Education needs to sort out before any of that can actually happen.
I'm aware that that process is already underway, but schools are open in countries around Europe, and we've heard time and again Manx solutions to Manx problems, and it does appear that we're waiting for the UK at the moment in terms of heading back to the schools.
The first thing I can say is I can say 100%, we are definitely not waiting for the UK. We will do it when it's right for us. You quite rightly say the UK is in a very different situation, both in terms of their viral spread across the community and what they're seeing. We are a lot smaller and a lot more nimbler, but we do have to make sure school-wise that the logistics are right. And that's what takes the time. I know countries in Europe, some have taken different decisions. There's some that, like us, are working on the logistics before opening. There are other countries that have just rushed and opened the doors and said, right, it's back to normal with schools. We'll wait and see how that plays out for those different groups of countries, but we are going to do what's right here, and we believe that in order to do that, this has got to be planned to make sure that it works when it's in place, and that's what the Minister for Education was referring to the last time he came to the press conference.
Thank you.
Okay, next up I've got Alex at the BBC.
Hi, Minister. Regarding the Abbotswood cluster, now, 2 residents have died, unfortunately, since being moved from the home. Earlier this week, we were told that the DHSC had no choice but to move the residents out of Abbotswood. And that followed on from what you called an unacceptable lease offer from the building's owners, I believe. I just wonder what the terms of the offer, which were deemed to be so unacceptable, were.
My understanding is the terms are commercially confidential, so I can't actually divulge the terms. But what I can say is there was a short-term option and a long-term option, and neither of them, in the view of DHSC, was value for money for the taxpayer. Just to clarify, I assume you're getting the 2 from Abbotswood in relation to the comments I made yesterday. The death I have sadly had to announce today was that individual yesterday. We didn't at that point have the paperwork through confirming it was a COVID-19 death. So that is the same individual. It's not 2 separate ones from yesterday and today.
Sorry, so that is one?
That is one. That is the same person, because when Paul asked me the question yesterday, we didn't at that stage have the formal paperwork confirming that it was a death of COVID-19, which we have had today.
Thank you for the clarification. Just to follow from that, is the DHSC saying that the offer received from Abbotswood, well, the offers, the short-term and the long-term, was so high that they justified moving vulnerable people who have endured a real tragedy out of their homes? That's quite hard to believe.
Yes, basically, Alex. The offers were not value for money for the taxpayer, and the terms and conditions attached as well were not acceptable. And as such, so it wasn't just around money as well, it was actually around the terms and conditions attached. As I've said from day one, the ideal solution would have been for the residents to remain within the home. After all, Abbotswood was their home. And it is not something that is done lightly, but DHSC cannot operate out of a home without a lease agreement in place. And unfortunately, we could not accept the terms that were offered.
And just finally, as a supplementary, under emergency powers, did the department have no option to requisition the building? Is that not possible?
No, my understanding is that wouldn't be an appropriate use of emergency powers and would be open to challenge.
Thank you.
Next up, I've got Jess, Isle of Man Newspapers. Hi, Jess.
Hello. I'm wondering if you can help me with this question. It's about co-parenting. So a father contacted us. He's asking if you could clarify the future exemptions for co-parenting of those like him who used to travel a lot to the UK to see their children before the pandemic. Will they be allowed to visit their children soon? And if so, how would this work in terms of restrictions?
So just to be clear, we're talking about where one parent is in the UK with the children and the other parent is on Ireland.
Yes.
Obviously, we've currently got the border closure in place. The border closure does not allow for that continuous movement back and forth. You know, I'd love to be able to stand here and put a date on it to reassure that person, but I really can't, because the border measures has been one of the measures that really has suppressed the virus in our community. And I think, as the Chief Minister has stated several times from this podium, it'll be one of the last things basically relaxed and removed, because it is a very strong weapon in our armoury. You know, things are constantly looked at, but at the moment there is certainly no plans to change that.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is for Joanne, please.
Certainly.
Hi, Jess.
Hello. I actually want to touch upon again what Tim was talking about in terms of the 230 or so teenagers and young women from the island who had their images taken without their consent and posted on a porn site. I'm just wondering if you can give some advice, really, because as we're using social media a lot, particularly Facebook and Instagram, how often should we be updating our settings? And could you maybe provide some tips on that, basically?
Yeah, of course. So I think, Jess, I've already spoken about, we need to be really mindful about what we share. The world we live in now is very different to maybe the world from a teenage perspective that I grew up in. So we need to be really, really mindful about what we're sharing, because as soon as we put something out there, it's gone, whether that's an image or a comment. But there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of protecting yourself. And the Office of Cybersecurity and Information Assurance, we talk about these steps to cybersecurity. So this is on the bigger picture, really, Jess, but it looks at things like backing up your data. So if something does happen and you lose all your information, for instance, you can become more resilient because you've got some of it sat there. So for instance, if you lost all your photographs, you can get them back. So I say that's really important. You should also be looking at installing antivirus software onto your devices, just to protect yourself from any malicious software that is out there or that someone's trying to put on that. I'd also say, in terms of, you need to protect your devices, and that's what I mean by that is updating them. So updating the software. So any apps that we're using, you need to update them, and you can set many applications. You can set to do that automatically. But if not, you need to make sure that you're doing that. And that's because there will be vulnerabilities in any sort of technology or any app. And organisations will find that, and what they'll do is they'll patch it, they'll fix it, and they'll put an update. And that's so it's really important that you do that. Otherwise, you're not on the latest version. I'd also say something else which I covered very briefly is the passwords. That's really important that we use really strong passwords. You don't be using your name. Don't be using the password 123456. I think there's 23 million attacks on that password last year. I think there's reports from the National Cybersecurity Centre in the UK. So use a strong password, and those 3 random but memorable words are a really great place to start. Add a few capital letters and special characteristics into that as well, and that will make it even stronger.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks, Jess.
And she's waited very patiently to the end, but Amanda from Jeff the Mongoose.
Good evening, Minister.
Good evening, Amanda.
Yesterday, the Chief Minister said the Council of Ministers will be discussing social gatherings on Saturday, with a plan to make an announcement to the public on Monday. If a decision is being made tomorrow, why can the public not be informed straight away when people are so desperate for information of when they can see loved ones?
Well, the decision will be made tomorrow, and I think it needs to be, then we need to get ready all the communications to go out. One of the things that's very important, and I keep banging on about this, is the way we communicate. I was asked a question at this podium a few days ago about the way government communicates. And so it's important that we get things right and that we get it into a way that people can understand, so people know what they are allowed to do, what we're not quite ready to let them do. And that does take time. So it's not as simple as just making a decision and firing it out in a press release. We need to be able to explain it to people so that they can understand it and understand what that change means. And that will take a couple of days to do.
Thank you. My second question is for Joanne, if that's all right.
Certainly.
Hi.
Hiya.
The healthcare sector is using novel ways to stay in touch and assess patients, including video conferencing. Can you be certain that patients' data can be protected from hackers, along with safeguarding the island's NHS, when there is a much heavier reliance on technology now?
Yeah, so again, what we need to do is we need to think about, whenever we're trying to look at how to protect things, we need to look at what is the information that we're trying to protect, and then make a decision of the best way to do that. So if we pick up video conferencing, for example, we've just released recent advice on that, which can be found on our website, and it's to look at, think about what are you discussing when you're on video conferencing. What's the level of the information, and how secure does it need to be? What I'd always say is, before using any element of technology, always think about what is the data that I'm transmitting or I'm giving out in terms of video conferencing, and is this the best way to do it, and is that technology secured enough for me to do that?
And is it possible, can you confirm really that the government's taking all those necessary steps, and can you be sure that you can be protected when sort of taking on these new technological ways of communicating with patients and looking after them?
The Isle of Man government takes cybersecurity really seriously, and actually all steps necessary will be taken to make sure that personal data of individuals is secure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can just add to that, Amanda, it's certainly within DHSC, we take that very, very seriously because we hold very confidential data on people. I think I've banged on in Tynwald and the House of Keys before about video conferencing, because there's been a push for it for a long, long time, that it's not as simple as just putting up a TV screen and plugging it in. There's all the things around encryption, the security of the line that's being used. There's all those that get factored into the decision. So we are acutely aware in DHSC of the responsibility we hold for holding people's information. And we take that exceptionally seriously. I've got two more people indicating for questions. Tim from Manx Radio first, and then Paul.
Flat out.
Yes, just a very quick question, Minister, because I'm sure you've got a Zoom family quiz to go to. Has the state of emergency been extended? Has that been clarified today? Because it was due to run out, I believe, today.
His Excellency has issued a new proclamation, so the proclamation period has been extended.
For how long?
So under the Act, it is for up to a month.
Thank you.
Paul?
Thank you, David. Obviously, one of the good things, I suppose, about having a delayed press conference is that we get a chance to look at the UK latest. And Matt Hancock today announced that healthcare workers and everyone in nursing homes over 65, I believe, will be tested, even though they're not displaying symptoms. Now, you've held out against this one. This is a symptomatic, isn't it? Sort of way of cases in the community. What do you think to that?
I have seen that announcement that Matt made earlier this evening. In relation to that, again, though, it depends what type of testing. So if we've got antibody testing, that will be actually of great use to us. Doing a full PCR test within all our nursing homes across the island of absolutely everyone, that gives you comfort for that day it's done and that period it's done, but it gives you no comfort after that, because if a employee picks it up and brings it into the home, what matters more in nursing homes is that appropriate PPE is used correctly, because that is ultimately the front line of defence in relation to protecting those vulnerable patients and residents within those nursing homes. So that is more important. The UK, in terms of care homes, has had quite a lot of incidences. Yes, we've had the Abbotswood cluster, and we have had one other case in a home where no other cases have emerged. But we haven't seen the widespread issues that the UK has had, because we have been going out and doing community testing, and we have been very quick to go in and make sure that the processes and procedures in homes are correct.
If you get the right kit and you have the resources, do you think this will be something that will be looked at?
Antibody testing, most certainly, I think. But again, even with antibody testing, and I know I might come across sometimes as if the doom merchant probably. But even with antibody testing, we've got to be very careful that it doesn't give us too much confidence, because again, one of the key things is, although we know people have got antibodies after they've had it, we don't know how long those antibodies and that immunity lasts for. So while it gives us comfort in a certain way, as scientists around the world are saying, don't get too excitable and think just because you've had it you're now immune, because the evidence just still isn't there yet, and it may take several years to actually build up that base of evidence. But the two best tools in our arsenal, which are still being developed, would be that antibody test, and ultimately, of course, the real gold standard to reach for would be a vaccine, but that again seems to be a long way off. Before I finish, I would like to do some shout-outs for Howard's Heroes. The first shout-out for today is for local company Go Green, who have donated P3 respirator masks to Nobles Hospital. Not once, but twice. This really is very much appreciated and vital in helping to keep our health workers safe. So thank you, Go Green. The second shout-out is for the Co-op in Port Erin, who along with their customers raised £900 for the Department of Health and Social Care. The money raised will be split between patient comfort, hospital equipment and education. Absolutely amazing. Well done to everyone. As Minister for Health and Social Care, I would also like to give a personal shout out to the staffing team who have been working exceptionally hard to ensure we continue to recruit frontline staff to the hospital throughout this difficult period. I know some of them have only actually had one day off in the last 7 weeks. All of their efforts are very much appreciated and are ensuring that our services can continue to operate. So thank you to each and every one of you from me. And finally, we've had 2 nominations in for a regular participant in these briefings. Alex Bell from the BBC Isle of Man. Alex recently did a live stream on Facebook playing keyboard and singing requests for 3 hours. And at the conclusion, Alex had his head shaved, hence the interesting haircut I've been staring at for a few weeks then, Alex. And this magnificent effort raised over £1,000 for the Manx Solidarity Fund. So well done, Alex. Just further examples there today of the individuals and organisations making a huge difference to our community in these challenging times. So that is all from me today. Thank you very much. Please remember, stay at home where you can and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you all for staying at home where possible.
We hope you're staying positive in these challenging times.
We've come so far.
As we move forward into the next stage,
please continue to stay at home whenever possible.
And we will continue to keep you safe.
Make sensible choices. Your actions are vital.
Please play your part.
For you, for our island and for our community.
Please stay home where possible.
For you, our island and our community.
Please stay home where possible.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.
Stay safe.